Okay, so now we're moving on to the last segment, which is adding our sign and finishing off the back of the wreath, plus adding the wire piece to help hang. At this point, you will need a pair of scissors because you're going to cut the ends of the fishing line off. If you have some needle nose pliers and some wire cutters, they are useful. However, they are not mandatory because I will show you how to do it with and without. So we're going to flip over our wreath and work on the back side for a few minutes. So what we're going to do is pipe cleaners have sharp, metal in them. So we don't want it scratching your surface. So what we want to do is just kind of tie off those wire ends. So you can, sorry, I've got mesh shedding everywhere. So you can twist, if you do not have the tools, you can simply twist all the way to the end and then just kind of roll the pipe cleaner down and kind of tuck it in like that. If you have the wire cutters, you can basically twist a few times and just save some twisting time by cutting off the ends. Sorry, rubber band. And then just the needle nose pliers just help to kind of move it down. So since I make a lot of wreaths, it dries out my fingers, so I do like to use my tools, and I do have them. But this is also an opportunity too, when we're doing this, is you can kind of, change the position of mesh if you think it needs to be moved. So I'm going to work my way around this wreath, and what I'm tying off. I call it tying off, but kind of just turning down the pipe cleaners. You might come across a couple spots where the mesh is more rolled out, and you can certainly adjust that by untwisting, and this is why I don't twist that many times in the beginning, and pulling that inner one so it rolls more inward. You can kind of see it's just shifted slightly. Sometimes it's more dramatic. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward the video at this point and work my way around, finishing off this backside, and then we'll add the sign. Okay, so we finished off all the twist ties on the back side. So now we're going to flip it back over to the front. And every time I do work on the back side, it does squish your ribbon, but you'll just want to kind of fan out your ribbon, and you'll do this several times throughout the, making a wreath. And what I'm kind of wanting to look at while I'm doing this is kind of the positioning of where I would like my sign to be. And I will continue to move the ribbon around even after I've added the sign, because we'll squish it a little bit when we're working on the back side. All right, so I think the best thing to do sometimes is just put your sign on and see where you want it. And I think I'm gonna go with that. And so again, you can move ribbon around so that you have certain ones showing. If you like those better, I want to tie in a certain color or something. It's really up to you. So the way to tie off these or add the sign to these wreaths is you have fishing line. It is very, transparent, so it's very hard to see sometimes through the video, but I will walk you through the stages. So you're going to start with one area, and you are going to want it to kind of sit into your wreath. So you do want it to be a little bit taut. You don't want to squish it down too much, but you're going to feed that fishing line down into the back of your wreath. So I'm just going to show you. So I've come between these two bars, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it back. I'm going to wrap around a bar and push it back up to the front. And again, I realize this is very hard to visualize on a video because the fishing line is very hard to see. So now I've come back up. So I've wrapped around one of the bars in the back of the wreath frame. I'm going to take my end and I'm going to go back into the same hole from the original. And I've learned over the last year that doing this helps with preventing slippage, because sometimes just gravity takes a hold and will kind of pull the sign, although they're not very heavy, it sometimes will cause them to slip, but this helps it keep in place a little bit more. So now I'm going to push this back through that same hole, kind of, that I went through, and I'm going to pull it to the back side, maybe, if I don't lose a hold of it. Okay, and I'm pulling that back to the back side. So now I've got that one on, and now I'm going to go, I think I'm going to do the other bottom at this point, and pull those two together. So I'm going to find my fishing line that coordinates with this other kind of wheel area. And in this case, I'm going to kind of come down. You can kind of see a little bit bigger opening here. And I'm going to come down. Sorry, I didn't mean to bump the camera. To the back side. I'm going to wrap around one of those bars and come back up. And I've got fishing line from some of the other side intertwined here. So I'm pulling that over. All right, so now I'm gonna find the end, and you have plenty of fishing line to work with. So if it doesn't work out, you can always retie, and you should have plenty a lot of extra. All right, so I'm gonna put it back through this hole, maybe. Sometimes. There. All right. And again, I'm going to kind of make sure I'm not pulling too far down because I want it to kind of be in the center. It won't be perfect, but you know, thereabouts. And I think that looks good. So now I'm going to take both of the fishing lines that I have around the back side and kind of pull it a little bit taut in my hand. And I'm just kind of making sure it's a little bit centered. It doesn't have to be exact, but just making sure it's where I want it to be. Now I'm going to flip over my wreath. And I do like to try and make use of any crossbars that are in there because it does give me something else to kind of anchor it to. So I'm going to take this one of these and I'm wrapping it around this bar. And this is going to kind of be my center where I'm going to tie it off to. So all I did is I wrapped it around. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. So I wrapped it around the bar. So now it kind of gives me a little bit more of a, leverage there. And if you tie perfect square knots, more power to you. I always just tie multiple because then I don't have to worry so much about my perfect square knot. But I'm going to pull that tight, and then not too tight because you don't want to pull it so far that it shifts the position on your front. And I'm going to throw about 4 throws. And then I do like to, and it's probably overkill, but I do tend to do another set of knots. So I'm taking one of the ends and wrapping it around some of the bars, just so it's not just right on top of that exact knot. And I'm going to throw a few throws here. Okay, so now I'm going to trim off my extra fishing line. And then I'm going to flip my wreath back over. So now I've got my bottom on, and I'm happy with where that is. So now we're going to work on the top. And it's the same idea. So you're going to feed the fishing line down and grab one of those, wrap it around one of those wire rings. And I'm going to come back up. And this hole is a little bit bigger because it was one that was made to hang the sign. And I'm going to go back down kind of the same way I came up and pull through. So now that one's on the back side. And yes, I have a little bit of a hole there, but that's okay because I can move the ribbon and mesh around to fill in that little gap. It just helps to get the fishing line down. So now, let's see if I can move this so you can see, make sure it's in the frame. So again, I'm going to take this and I'm going to find my way down to the wire, a wreath form, wrap it around one of the rungs and pull up and go back down through the hole and around to the back side. Okay. So now I'm going to find, hopefully, both of my, there it is. I'm having trouble finding the second fishing twine. All right, so I'm going to kind of pull that into my hand. I'm going to flip it back to the front real quick, because I want to make sure I've kind of got enough tension that the top isn't like gaping and the bottom is more secure. And again, I will work the ribbon and the mesh so that it all fills in. But I feel like that's a good spot for that. So I'm going to flip it back over. And I think I'm going to utilize this bar here as my crossbar. So I'm going to take one, wrap it around, and then my second. Okay, so I now have them each wrapped around that. It was getting caught up in this mesh, so I was just trying to make sure that it wasn't going to pull it at an awkward angle, and that would cause it to loosen when I went to move mesh around. So I'm going to do the same thing I did on the lower side. Throw a couple throws, not worrying if it is a perfect square knot or not. Okay, so now I've got about 4 throws there. I'm going to take one end and wrap it around one more and throw a couple more. Okay, trim off my excess. And now I'm going to come back to my front. And now this is when I'm going to kind of pull and move that ribbon. So if I wanted to have it kind of tucked back behind, I can work my mesh, separate out my purples. So you can fill in any gaps just by moving your ribbon. And if you wanted to cover up the window, you could do so. This is you play with it and get it to the position you want and how you like it to look. There we go. I think I want to pull some pinks in here. I can even tuck this mesh back. So however you want to work it. But you just kind of want to make sure that your ribbons are showing and that they're, twisted in the right direction. Sometimes they do have a tendency to roll. There. All right. So now we've got the back tied off. We've got our ribbon. We've got our sign on. Now I'm going to put the little hanger on. Now you don't have to use the hanger. You certainly can just use the wire rungs of the wreath to hang. I do like to use my wire, so I'm going to kind of come up to the top because I use just a simple 3M hook to hang my wreaths. Now again, this is when wire, the needle nose pliers can come in handy, but the wire is very malleable, so you can do it with your fingers. I do like to use it. I find it a little bit easier to get tighter, but it's not impossible to do without. So I'm gonna wrap it around. As you see, I'm moving it, but I am gonna pull my wire needle nose in. I apologize if my hand's in the way. So I'll take one end. And pretty much that's the end. Once we have this on, we now have our wreath all complete. You can hang it up, and you can always rework the ribbon once it's up on the wall or the door. But I thank you for purchasing your kit. Hope you enjoyed making it, and I look forward to you joining me for another video. I am starting to work on some summer ideas, so stay tuned for that. But thank you. Have a great day.